It was the single most terrifying and exhilarating moment of my life. I was standing in a gleaming glass-walled conference room overlooking the New York skyline, presenting to the Thorne Group executives. This wasn't just a pitch. It was the chance to save the little bakery my grandmother, bless her heart, left me. My inheritance wasn't money. It was the world's most famous sourdough starter, what we called the golden strain. I gripped the edge of the mahogany table, my hands sweating despite the room's Arctic air conditioning. "This isn't just flour and water," I started, trying to sound professional instead of passionate. "This starter is over 80 years old. It survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and 3 different grandmothers. Its complex DNA, its sheer flavor profile, it's why our little bakery has a waiting list every Saturday." The executives, all sharp suits and cynical smiles, mostly just scribbled notes. But one man, sitting at the head of the table, wasn't writing. Marcus Thorne, the CEO. He didn't just walk into a room. He commanded the air around him. He had this cold, beautiful face and eyes that looked like they were constantly calculating the value of your soul. He was the most ruthless businessman in New York, and he hadn't blinked once. Across from me sat my cousin, Audrey Vance. She was always the perfect one. Perfect grades, perfect clothes, and now the perfect executive assistant to Marcus Thorne. She gave me a small, tight, encouraging smile that felt like a knife twist. We grew up together, but ever since she got this corporate job, she'd treated my bakery life like a quaint, embarrassing hobby. The test was simple: bake 2 identical loaves. Mine using my golden strain and a control loaf. The aroma was supposed to be my final word. I slid my loaf forward. It was golden, crusty, smelling faintly of citrus and history. "Mr. Thorne," Audrey smoothly interrupted before I could finish. "With all due respect to Willow's grandmother's hobby, we need consistency and scalability. The samples are prepared," and she pushed forward the loaves. But something was wrong. My heart sank. My loaf, the one baked with the real strain, looked slightly pale. And when the executive next to Marcus cut into it, the crumb structure looked weak. "Ms. Hayes," Marcus Thorne's voice cut through the silence, low, precise, utterly devoid of emotion. "This is inconsistent. It lacks the structure you promised. Frankly, it lacks the signature complexity your reputation suggests." Panic seized me. It was impossible. I checked the starter batch at home this morning. It was thriving. "Wait, Mr. Thorne, there's been a mistake," I pleaded, trying to reach for the remaining portion of my starter sitting innocently on the counter. "My starter never fails. I think the ambient temperature—" "I disagree, Willow," Audrey cut in, her voice now calm and authoritative. "I observed your prep this morning. I told you that tiny batch of starter looked sluggish. I even advised you to check the hydration. Clearly, you rushed the fermentation. Amateur mistake, really." That was the lie. That was the moment of betrayal. Audrey had been in my bakery kitchen, not to advise, but to observe. I suddenly realized my emergency batch, the one I had left cooling on the rack before driving here, was gone. My eyes snapped to Audrey's. She didn't flinch. Her smile was gone, replaced by a cold, corporate veneer. She had swapped my living potent golden strain with a dead generic substitute just before the presentation. She had used my vulnerability, her assumed trust, to sabotage me. "I apologize, Mr. Thorne," I managed, my voice trembling, not from failure, but from pure, blinding betrayal. The room was spinning. I had just lost my family's honor, and it was thanks to my own cousin, who now stood there looking perfectly victorious. Marcus Thorne looked at my pale, inconsistent loaf, then at me. He picked up the slice and brought it to his nose, ignoring the corporate murmurs. He didn't eat it. He just inhaled the faintest, weak scent. And for a fleeting half-second, something shifted in his cold, calculating eyes. Not anger, not disappointment. Something distant. Something almost like recognition. "Dismissed, Miss Hayes," he finally said, dropping the slice back onto the plate. "Audrey, take notes. We have other matters." I was escorted out, defeated. But as I walked past the table, my eyes caught a reflection in the glass wall. Audrey, now sitting confidently in my chair, her face glowing with silent triumph. She hadn't just stolen the recipe. She had stolen my chance, my trust, and my name. The pain of her betrayal was far sharper than any corporate rejection. I drove out of Manhattan in a blur of tears and frustrated rage. My phone was blowing up with texts from my mother, who was furious that I'd embarrassed the family name. But the shame of failing the Thorne Group pitch wasn't the worst part. The worst part was knowing Audrey, my own flesh and blood, was the reason. She didn't just want me to fail. She wanted to see me destroyed. She wanted the golden strain for herself, repackaged, corporate, and hers. I spent the next 3 days in a haze, avoiding the bakery, feeling every door in the industry slam shut. Audrey had wasted no time. A quiet leak to the food blogs mentioned my inconsistent quality control. An amateur presentation to the Thorne Group. The reviews for my small bakery plummeted overnight. Reputation is everything in food, and mine was ruined. On the 4th day, I was sitting alone in my silent bakery, finally staring at the empty wooden bowl where the stolen starter should have been. I was ready to admit defeat and sell the building. The bell above the door chimed, cutting through the silence. I looked up. It wasn't a customer. It was the last person I ever expected to see. It was Marcus Thorne. Alone, he stood there, framed by the late afternoon sunlight, looking completely out of place in my rustic, flour-dusted little shop. His charcoal suit, his calculated elegance, it screamed billions, not baguettes. "Ms. Hayes," he said, his voice flat, "I believe we have unfinished business." I crossed my arms, defiant despite the knot in my stomach. "You fired me. You let your assistant slander my name. The business is finished, Mr. Thorne." He walked further into the shop, his expensive shoes making no sound on the wooden floor. He walked right past the glass display case and stopped by the empty workspace. His eyes landed on a faded, framed photograph of my grandmother, smiling, holding a loaf of her perfect sourdough. "The consistency was weak," he stated, turning back to me. "But the flavor profile was wrong, Ms. Hayes. It was flat. Tight. The dough was struggling, but the true signature of the golden strain wasn't even present." My jaw dropped. That tiny, almost undetectable signature flavor, a hint of chestnut, a lingering sharpness, was known only to my family. The fact that he noticed its absence was impossible. "How do you know that?" I challenged. He ignored my question. Instead, he took out a business card, thick black, utterly intimidating. "Audrey Vance is pushing hard to sell the original formula to my acquisition team. She claims she can recreate it, stabilize it, and scale it." My blood ran cold. She wasn't just trying to shame me. She was trying to monetize my lineage. "She stole the original," I whispered, the shame turning to burning fury. "She used her corporate access to destroy me and claim the rights." Marcus Thorne didn't offer sympathy. He offered a cold, hard fact. "She will succeed, Ms. Hayes. She has the capital, the access, and the ruthlessness." However, he paused, studying my face with an unnerving intensity. "I hate being lied to, and I hate paying for cheap imitations." He slid the black card across the counter. "Meet me tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., my office. I don't believe in fairy tales, but I am offering you a chance to reclaim your life. This isn't charity. This is a hostile corporate maneuver, and I need a partner who is just as ruthless. You want revenge? Come prepared to talk business." He turned and left as suddenly as he arrived, leaving the scent of power and expensive cologne hanging in the air. I looked down at the black card. He wasn't offering a date. He was offering a weapon. My whole body was buzzing. This wasn't salvation. This was a war. I was now being invited to fight alongside the devil himself. And I was damn sure going to show Audrey what my grandmother taught me about fighting dirty the next morning. I was in Marcus Thorne's office suite, and it felt like walking onto the top of the world. Glass, steel, silence, and money that was practically vibrating in the air. Marcus didn't waste time. He gestured to a large digital screen displaying a corporate flowchart. Audrey Vance's picture was highlighted. Asterisk, here is your enemy, he began, his voice purely clinical. She used the internal system to file the original golden strain concept under her own name, listing you as a disgruntled, dismissed contractor. She's already in the advanced stages of securing a massive seed investment from our main competitor. If we don't stop her in 72 hours, she will own your legacy, and the Thorne Group will lose a key asset. Then you go to the police, I countered, my hands clasped tightly. She committed intellectual property theft. Marcus scoffed, a quick, dismissive sound. Ms. Hayes, this is corporate. Your evidence is a family dispute over a sourdough starter. She has signed documents and a plausible story. The police will take months. I deal in minutes, not months. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the polished desk. This was the moment of the deal. The moment he'd expose his true, ruthless self. Here's my deal, Willow, he stated, using my first name for the first time, though it held no warmth. I will dedicate my best legal research and investigative teams to you. I will personally ensure Audrey Vance is not only fired but publicly disgraced and unable to work in this industry again. I will make sure she is professionally ruined. My breath hitched. That was everything I wanted. But there had to be a catch. And what do you get, Mr. Thorne? I asked, looking directly into those cold eyes. You don't do anything without an exorbitant return. His gaze was intense. You are correct. I need to study the golden strain. I need to reverse engineer its unique cellular structure. My research division has a hypothesis about a specific, ancient grain profile that might be linked to the starter's longevity. I need that data. I need to own the scientific analysis of that starter. He then delivered the cruelest part of the business deal. I will help you secure the IP rights for the recipe. But in return, I get a 5-year exclusive contract on all scientific data derived from its genetic makeup. And you will work exclusively for the Thorne Group for 2 years to head the new Heritage Baking Division at a salary 10 times what you make now. It was a contract designed to control my legacy, but also to elevate my life far beyond my wildest dreams. It was a Faustian bargain, my self-respect in exchange for my independence. Before I could answer, a large, intimidating man in a sleek suit suddenly materialized behind Marcus. Sir, I advise against this agreement. She's unstable. The risk of emotional compromise is too high. It was his head of security, Max, the silent giant. Marcus didn't even look at Max. Thank you for your input, Max. But Ms. Hayes has something unique, and I always bet on unique assets. He turned back to me, ignoring his own security chief's warning, effectively challenging my mental stability and forcing my hand. Asterisk, it's not charity, Willow, Marcus repeated. It's a hostile takeover of a family asset. I need your passion. I need your recipe. You get your revenge, your company, and your damn integrity back. I get the scientific data. Take it or leave it. The choice was impossible. I could walk away, stay pure, and watch Audrey become a millionaire selling my grandmother's soul. Or I could shake hands with this absolute mercenary, reclaim my life, and accept the shackles of corporate genius. I looked at Marcus Thorne, then at the city view, then at the ghost of my grandmother's smile. I slowly extended my hand. I'll take the deal, Mr. Thorne, I said, my voice steady now. But you will find that the golden strain doesn't like to be owned. And neither do I. We are a partnership, not an asset. His grip was firm, cold, and electric. I look forward to the challenge, Ms. Hayes. Now, let's go ruin your cousin. The war had officially begun. Over the next few days, the Thorne Group machine moved with terrifying efficiency. My old bakery was transformed into a high-security temporary lab. Audrey was already nervous, facing legal questions about the provenance of her innovation. Marcus, however, was distant, focusing only on the scientific side of the starter. He had no interest in the baking. He was obsessed with the DNA. We were working late in the lab one evening, surrounded by glowing microscopes and specialized equipment that cost more than my entire life savings. I was isolating a small sample of the authentic golden strain for analysis. The unique, earthy scent of the old starter filled the sterile room, a scent of history, earth and warmth. Marcus was staring at a complex genomic readout on a screen when he suddenly froze. His shoulders slumped slightly, a rare crack in his perfect composure. "What is it, Mr. Thorne?" I asked, approaching the screen. "Nothing," he said sharply, waving a dismissive hand, but his voice was rough. He turned away, walking to a window. "It's not nothing," I insisted. "You just saw something that threw the most calculating man in New York off his game. Was the DNA different than you thought?" He stood there for a long moment, the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. He finally spoke, his voice quiet, stripped of the CEO facade. "That smell, Willow," he said, turning back, his gaze intensely focused on the jar holding my grandmother's starter. "That precise smell of chestnut and long fermentation. I haven't smelled that since I was 10 years old." I waited, not daring to interrupt the silence. "My mother was disinherited by the Thorne family," he explained, the words slow and heavy. "She was a baker, a magnificent one. The family business was finance, but she loved the soil and the grain. She ran away, married an academic, and opened a tiny anonymous shop in Queens. That shop was her life, her joy." He rubbed his temples, a gesture of profound weariness. "When she died suddenly, the Thorne family immediately seized her assets, claiming they were tainted by the non-corporate marriage. They erased her from the family history. But before they could sell off her shop, I went there one last time. The smell. It was everywhere. That exact scent." My mind raced, connecting the impossible dots. You think my grandmother's recipe? I think your grandmother. An immigrant who started her bakery 80 years ago. Worked in the same tiny corner of Queens as my mother decades later," Marcus finished, his voice hushed. "I think they knew each other. I think my mother's formula, the last tangible piece of her that wasn't erased by my family, is somehow intertwined with yours." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were raw with vulnerability. "The analysis isn't just about business, Willow. It's about finding proof. It's about recovering a piece of my mother's legacy that my father stole from me. Audrey's theft isn't just an IP problem. It's a direct challenge to the only part of my past that matters." The revelation changed everything. This ruthless CEO wasn't just my partner in revenge. He was another heir, driven by a deep personal need to protect a legacy from the same kind of corporate greed that now defined him. "So the deal isn't just scientific data," I concluded softly. "It's about justice for your mother." "It is," he confirmed, the simple truth hanging between us. "Now, help me find the proof, Willow. Not for the money. For the family we both lost." The sterile lab suddenly felt warmer, filled with the scent of two intertwined histories. I was no longer afraid of Marcus Thorne. We were bound by the shared goal of protecting a truth that was greater than both of us. The alliance was no longer a harsh contract. It was a sacred quest. The shared truth about the golden strain being tied to Marcus's mother was the accelerant we needed. The collaboration stopped feeling like a cold corporate deal and started feeling like a family mission, a fact, both exhilarating and terrifying. We moved the fight from the lab to Audrey's world. Marcus, leveraging his immense resources, had his security team, led by a now somewhat respectful Max, monitor Audrey's movements and digital communications. We weren't just proving theft. We were building a case for systematic deceit. The breakthrough came late one night. Max delivered a clean, encrypted voice recording. It wasn't Audrey talking to the competitor. It was Audrey talking to her own mother, my Aunt Carol. The sound was tinny. But Carol's voice, the woman who used to bake me cookies after school, was unmistakable. Asterisk. "You just need to get through the board meeting, honey. Your cousin is too naive. She's already given up. Just promise me you won't mention the family recipe book. We can't let this slip. This contract will finally let us move out of this neighborhood." I felt a sickening lurch in my stomach. It wasn't just Audrey. It was a planned familial conspiracy, fueled by their desire to use my grandmother's legacy as a ladder for their own social climbing. They weren't stealing out of corporate rivalry. They were stealing out of petty, small-town jealousy and ambition. "She used her own mother's pride as a leverage point," I whispered, the rage turning cold. They always hated that Grandma left the bakery and the strain to me. The dreamer, instead of their successful daughter, Marcus, who was analyzing Audrey's professional calendar, didn't offer a platitude. He just nodded grimly. The nastiest betrayals are always built on misplaced affection. Your aunt was complicit. That makes the corporate maneuver much simpler. The final piece of evidence came from the lab. After weeks of meticulous work, Marcus's team isolated the genomic markers. The golden strain didn't just have a unique profile. It had an anomaly, a specific, rare bacterium found only in the historic water and soil of Queens, where both my grandmother and Marcus's mother had run their shops. It's undeniable, Marcus stated, displaying the complex chart. The original strain from your grandmother's shop and the sample Audrey submitted share a unique microbial fingerprint. This is not a common recipe. It is a shared heritage. He turned to me, the coldness replaced by a focused intensity. The science proves your ownership, Willow. Now, we use the family betrayal to execute the termination. Audrey has called an emergency board meeting tomorrow to finalize her innovation deal. She thinks she's winning. We are going to walk in and introduce her to the full, uncompromising power of the Thorne Group. I looked at the chart, the undeniable truth of the DNA, the voice recording of the ultimate family betrayal. I was no longer an emotional victim. I was an heiress with irrefutable proof, backed by a man whose entire existence was a testament to revenge served perfectly cold. Let's teach them about the consequences of intellectual property theft. Mr. Thorne, I said, a dangerous calm settling over me. Let's show them what real corporate ruthlessness looks like. The boardroom was a theater of war. Audrey, impeccably dressed and radiating false confidence, stood before the Thorne Group board of directors. Preparing to sign the acquisition deal for her newly developed starter, my Aunt Carol was seated discreetly in the back, beaming with pride and anticipation. Marcus and I entered 10 minutes late. The silence was immediate and hostile. Mr. Thorne, the chairman grumbled, we were about to finalize the deal for Ms. Vance's concept. Your tardiness asterisk, I apologize, Chairman, Marcus cut in, his voice ringing with cold authority. We were finalizing the actual due diligence for this transaction. I believe Ms. Vance's presentation is now void. Audrey laughed, a nervous, forced sound. Mr. Thorne, don't be ridiculous. I have full legal documentation. You have a lie, Audrey, I said, stepping forward. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't pleading. I was calm, professional, and utterly lethal. And I have the truth. And the truth in this room is defined by intellectual property law. I signaled to Max. The large screen behind Audrey suddenly displayed 2 complex genomic charts labeled Sample A and Sample B. Sample B is the fraudulent culture my cousin Audrey Vance submitted to this board. Claiming it was her innovation, I explained, addressing the room, not Audrey. Sample A is the golden strain, the 8-year-old family heirloom she stole from me, the legitimate owner. The room buzzed with confusion. Marcus stepped up, leaning into the scientific gravity of the moment. The conversion value of this meeting, Marcus announced, his voice carrying the finality of a judge, is demonstrating the absolute importance of intellectual property. The microbial DNA analysis, commissioned by the Thorne Group, shows that Sample B contains a specific, proprietary marker unique to the Hayes family heritage. This isn't just about a recipe. It's about genetic theft. Audrey's face went from corporate smugness to sheer, terrifying panic. That's a lie. You manipulated the data. Willow, you're hysterical. Am I, Audrey? I countered, my eyes burning into hers. Then tell us, why did you delete all the communications you had with your mother, Aunt Carol, discussing how to discredit my name and steal the formula? Max, play the audio file. The voice recording of Aunt Carol's conspiracy played through the room, exposing the deep, familial betrayal to the board. Aunt Carol in the back gasped and slumped in her chair. Utterly undone, the board members facing a massive IP lawsuit and a potential PR disaster. Immediately turned on Audrey, Marcus delivered the final swift blow. Ms. Vance, Not only is your contract with the Thorne Group immediately terminated for corporate espionage and deceit, but based on the evidence, we are filing a formal complaint with the State Bar regarding your conduct. Furthermore, we are informing all major firms that you cannot be trusted with sensitive data. You are not just fired. You are professionally erased. Audrey let out a choked sob, her perfect corporate life collapsing around her like a sandcastle. She looked at me, not with hatred, but with pleading. "Willow, please, the only thing I'm giving you is the bill for my legal fees," Audrey, I said, turning away. The satisfaction was immense. It wasn't just revenge. It was the ultimate public vindication of my family's honor. Backed by irrefutable science and delivered by the most powerful man in the room. Justice wasn't slow. It was swift, definitive, and devastating. The collapse of Audrey Vance was instant and total. She was escorted from the building by Max, Aunt Carol trailing behind, crying and begging. They lost their leverage, their reputation, and their standing. Hours later, Marcus and I were back in his penthouse, the high-stakes tension replaced by an unnerving calm. The war was won, but the contract remained. "The golden strain is legally yours, Willow," Marcus stated, handing me a thick portfolio. "The IP rights belong solely to you. Your family's legacy is secure." He then slid a second document across the table. "This is my side of the agreement. The 2-year exclusive research contract, the 5-year data exclusivity, and your salary, which starts next month." Looked at the salary figure. It was more money than my grandmother had made in 10 years. My signature felt heavy, yet completely justified. "Now that the business is settled," Marcus said, standing and walking toward the sprawling window view, "there is a personal matter." I held my breath. Expecting a romantic confession, he turned back. "I want to honor the legacy we just saved. That bakery of yours in Brooklyn. It holds the scent of my mother and the history of your grandmother. It's too small for the ambition you now possess." "I bought the building," he announced, his voice still purely transactional, "and the 2 storefronts adjacent to it. Effective immediately, I am financing the construction of a state-of-the-art flagship bakery and research facility. It will be named the Golden Strain Institute. You will be the sole president and chief innovator of this new company. Fully owned and operated by you, but funded and supported by the Thorne Group." He walked over and handed me a small, heavy knot to a house, but to the new 3-story building. "This is not a romantic gift, Willow. It's a strategic investment in the future of the Thorne Group, and it is my commitment to you. I believe in your talent more than any asset I own." The power of the gesture hit me harder than any traditional love confession. He wasn't giving me a flower. He was giving me an empire built on my own merit. "Why, Marcus?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. "You gave me the job, the money, the IP. Why give me the control too?" "Because," he said, "step in close," the corporate barrier finally dissolving. "I learned my lesson watching my father destroy my mother's passion. I will not repeat that mistake. The Golden Strain requires a fierce protective owner, not a controlling partner. You own the company, Willow. I only ask for the right to be your business partner. And perhaps your future." Asterisk, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a simple platinum band. "I won't call this a proposal yet. I'm asking for a commitment to build a future, professional and personal, that honors both our pasts. The ring symbolizes the circle of commitment. No more secrets. No more lies. Just us and the strain." It wasn't a question. It was a powerful, beautiful agreement. I took his hand, accepting the ring. The war had ended, and a magnificent, challenging partnership had just begun. A year later, the scent of perfectly baked sourdough and roasted coffee filled the air. We were at the grand opening of the Golden Strain Institute. The building was magnificent. A massive, glass-fronted bakery on the ground floor, and a state-of-the-art culinary research lab on the second. Willow Hayes, not in a wedding dress, but in a pristine chef's coat, embroidered with the logo of the Golden Strain, stood at the podium. Marcus Thorne stood proudly beside her, his hand resting lightly possessively. On the small of her back, the event was a blend of business and family. The Thorne Group board was present, applauding politely. Max, the former skeptic, was now head of security for the Institute, wearing a small, almost undetectable smile. "This is not just a building," Willow announced, her voice strong and confident. "This is a testament to integrity. A year ago, I was betrayed by my own family for this recipe. But today, the golden strain is not just an IP asset. It is a symbol that talent and truth will always prevail over jealousy and deceit." She looked at Marcus, her eyes shining with love and gratitude. "Thank you to my partner, Marcus Thorne, who showed me that the most ruthless business strategy is simply to bet on the truth." The two of them exchanged a look that spoke volumes of their shared victory. Their love story wasn't a fairy tale. It was a corporate merger, a reclamation of heritage, and a partnership built on mutual respect for ambition. After the speech, as the crowd mingled, Aunt Carol and Audrey, now professionally and financially depleted, stood far across the street, watching the massive celebration. Audrey looked shattered, realizing that her desperate theft had only accelerated Willow's rise to the top. Marcus noticed them, but didn't even flinch. He just tightened his hand around Willow's waist, confirming the truth of their new reality. Later that evening, after the last guest had left, Willow and Marcus stood alone in the quiet warmth of the flagship kitchen. The scent of the golden strain, comforting and real. Willow, now Mrs. Thorne, they'd had a private ceremony 6 months prior, leaned against her husband. "No regrets about the deal, Mrs. Thorne?" Marcus murmured, kissing her forehead. Willow smiled. Picking up a small jar containing the living, bubbling starter, the lineage, the legacy, the root of their empire, *none, she said firmly. "I didn't lose my legacy to a CEO. I gained a co-heir. And I finally realized the only thing more powerful than an 80-year-old recipe is a strong woman who knows how to fight for it." Marcus laughed, a deep, rich sound of genuine contentment. As they walked out, locking the doors to their new life, Willow knew the best revenge wasn't seeing her cousin ruined. It was seeing her grandmother's humble, powerful recipe celebrated, protected, and finally, completely hers. If Willow's incredible journey from a struggling baker to the president of the Golden Strain Institute teaches us anything, it's a powerful lesson about intellectual property and the sacredness of your own vision. Too often, we focus on the emotional pain of betrayal, but Willow showed us the true cost is the theft of potential. Her cousin Audrey didn't just steal a recipe. She tried to steal Willow's entire future by discrediting her professional integrity. The key takeaway for every person watching, especially those in the U.S. market who value entrepreneurship, is this: your talent is your most valuable intellectual property, and you must protect it fiercely. Never let someone else, especially family, convince you that your passion is merely a hobby. Beneath their corporate ambition, Willow's ultimate victory was finding a partner in Marcus, who didn't dismiss her legacy, but saw its scientific, corporate, and emotional value. He didn't just give her money. He gave her the resources for justice and the platform for true ownership. This story is a testament that when betrayal tries to bury you, must use that anger as the fuel to build something bigger, something undeniable. Your job, your recipe, your ideas, not just yours. It's your history, your power, and your future. Fight for it. Get ruthless about your own self-worth. If you've ever had an idea stolen, a promotion sabotaged, or a dream belittled by a jealous family member, you know this pain. Hit that like button to affirm that your legacy deserves to be protected, and subscribe to our channel. By joining our community, you're helping us share more stories that prove that justice in the business world, and in life, is always worth the fight. May your heritage always be honored, and your vision always be protected. Until our next dramatic reveal, stay powerful.